Hello, I'm Tara Brabazon and I'm the Dean of Graduate Research at Flinders University. Welcome to vlog 288. Burnout. Yep. This vlog and our next vlog are going to take particular words and phrases that we take for granted. We throw a lot of energy into these words and phrases, but we don't really think about what they mean and how we get out of these cliches and slogans and states. And so yes, this week's on burnout, next week's on writer's block. And the reason we're here is a remarkable student, and I won't name her, but a remarkable student came into my office 3 weeks ago now, absolutely sobbing, absolutely in tears. And once we got her in a way that was calmer and we could speak to her about what was going on, I said, "What's happening, darling? What's going on?" And she just had the phrases and the words, "I've got burnout and I've got writer's block." And I realised as she was speaking that there was no content behind those words and phrases. They weren't helping us understand what she was going through and indeed what was going wrong. And we use burnout so often in our culture at the moment, and there are reasons for it, that we rarely think about what is the content, what is the meaning when we say, "I'm burnt out." And so I wanted to know how to address this. And so, like many of the issues we've explored this year, there has been a fantastic literature that has emerged in the last couple of years. Again, it might be caused by the pandemic, but all sorts of remarkable books in particular have emerged on burnout. But I did want to log one particular example of academic journalism. Often academic journalism leads debates, and in the case of burnout, that is certainly true. And I wanted to log an article by Jance who's writing, "Burnout didn't happen to me, it happened for me." End of quote. Great title. So Jan stated that, quote, "Everything and everywhere felt unsafe." Is that you? It's probably most of us. So let's dig a bit here and find out what's going on in this space. Now, Emily Nagosti and Amelia Nagosti provided a strong diagnostic. So if you think burnout may be your issue, let's go through their diagnostic. Exhausted by everything, worried that you're not doing enough, living on the emotional extremes, the sensation that we're crumbling, and that sensation that we're just not managing. Okay, now the term was first used by Herbert Freudenberger in 1975, and Herbert had 3 parts to his definition of burnout. Firstly, emotional fatigue, and that is fatigue from caring too much. Amazing. 2, depersonalization, so a depletion of empathy, of caring and of compassion. And this is an important one, a decreased sense of accomplishment, so futility, feeling like nothing that you do will make any difference. Now, I don't know about you, but I recognise a lot of myself in that list, and that's because that list is basically the recipe for contemporary life. This is contemporary living. So that's why burnout exists in such high numbers. And some of the recent longitudinal studies, noting it was pre-COVID, so this is 2019, found that 20 to 30% of teachers in the United Kingdom, 20 to 30% of teachers have a moderately high to very high level of burnout. We're seeing similar rates in university academics, mainly it's been studied in the States. We also see it very heavily in, obviously, the caring professions, and parental burnout is now an emerging phrase in the literature. Okay, so yes, burnout creates this emotional exhaustion, but the problem really doesn't stop there. In fact, the problem only really starts there, because that then leads to negative impacts on health, negative impacts on our relationships, and negative impacts on our relationship with work. And the other bit of this conversation we need to have, and this one has surprised me, and I don't know why this is the case, so you can help me with this one. But burnout supposedly impacts more on women than men. And I'm not sure why it's gendered, but there were 3 very longitudinal studies that confirmed that women have a higher level of burnout than men. Now that doesn't feel right to me. The research shows that it is. And by the way, no mention of binary, non-binary or trans colleagues in this research so far. But I wonder if burnout for men is called something else. I wonder if it manifests differently. So send me an email, put comments at the base of this video. I'd really love to get your answers about this because this interests me a lot. So the self-help literature, yes, I went there again. The self-help literature is pretty basic on fixing burnout. And look, I made a list of some of the cures that a lot of our self-help colleagues have put in place for burnout, and they include obviously green smoothies. Whatever problem exists in the culture, a green smoothie will fix it. Exercise, self-compassion, mindfulness, right? Now, therefore, wellness is becoming one of these boxes that we have to tick in our daily life, right? Have you done a wellness program? Have you had your green smoothie for the day? Yes. And so we manage burnout as a culture through a wellness program. You can see the problem. And therefore, burnout becomes a barrier for living your best life. But actually, burnout is not about you. It's not about me. It's not about any individual. Burnout is not a personal attribute. It is caused by a devastating and debilitating context and environment. Now, a 2019 study in the US confirmed that 70% of the population had suffered burnout. And this was how they defined it, was caused by fatigue from external stresses. Now, this results in mental breakdowns, violent dreams, sudden resignations, and yes, suicidal thoughts. So what is occurring here is burnout emerges when we feel we are stuck in an emotion, stuck in exhaustion, stuck in a particular stage of our lives. Burnout for academics is incredibly common because of the teaching and the publishing and the grant writing, and on we go. And so the weeks become weekends every weekend. I've been an academic for 30 years. I have never had even one day of the 2-day weekend clear. Ever. That's not productive. So, don't believe me, that's not productive. But that's because it's a big job and it occupies all space. So let's offer some suggestions to create movement out of this emotional state. Let's not get stuck in an emotion, because that's what's causing it. Stuck in an emotion, stuck in a moment, stuck in a crisis. Let's get out of this beyond the green smoothie. Let's do it. 1, crucial one, remember your big goal. Burnout happens when we allow our context and our environment to burn us out. Outward burns us, out in. But we get out of burnout by having something to move towards, rather than endlessly reacting to the negative attributes around us that make us stuck. So instead of talking about stress, I'm stressed, I'm stressed, I'm stressed, what I need you to do is name the stresses, speak the words, name the stresses, and focus on the goals and the movement forward out of those stresses. 2, again, important one, break the burnout cycle, because it becomes a cycle. Now, this thing has to end, because if you're stuck, unless you come up with a strategy to move, you are going to stay stuck. So we have to find a way behaviourally to intervene in this cycle. Now, exercise can do it, absolutely. Conversation can do it. Naming the stresses, talking it through. Laughter can do it. Crying can do it. Affection can do it. Now, I pack the dishwasher. So when I get completely overwhelmed and start to fixate on something bad that's happened, I pack the dishwasher because it gives me something to do. And what am I doing? I'm packing the dishwasher. So that for me in my brain signals, okay, this is what we're doing. That moment is over. I'm reaching and moving to the next step in my day today. And that stops me getting stuck. It stops me thinking over and over and over again about something which could lead to relatively self-destructive behaviours. So we all have stress. Stress is not the issue. It's not the issue. Getting stuck in the stress is the issue. So come up with something that provides a behavioural ending to your emotional cycle, that intervenes in that cycle, stops it and moves you somewhere else. 3, find meaning. This one has been particularly important for me. This is the one that stops me getting burnout. This really is it. Okay. Many of us are in research projects or in jobs that what we do most of the time is completely pointless. So most of the time we're doing other people's pointless stuff. Most of us are in jobs like that, okay? So we just get drawn into other people's problems. Therefore, the best way to manage burnout is to have a good hard look at yourself and your life. I am becoming my 93-year-old father. He used to say that to me all the time, just have a buddy, good hard look at yourself, have a good hard look at your life. And in some ways that was probably pretty good advice. Because if you have a good hard look at yourself and your life, then you start to think about, you know what is worth my time? What is worth my intelligence? What is worth my passion? What is worth my ability? And also, therefore, what is not worth it? Now, if you're stressing about something that is important, that is worth the effort, then that makes sense because it's difficult, but it's justified. It's worth it. So spend the time. It's difficult, but it's worth it. But if something is pointless, if something is completely meaningless and it's creating stress, then it's time to call this craziness out and stop doing the pointless stuff. Stop doing the stuff with no meaning, no importance, that is creating burnout. Now remember, not everything's going to be meaningful or important. We need to get to a point where, a lot of the stuff we do for work is sort of neutral. Not completely pointless, but just sort of, okay, this is neutral, let's just do this, right? But that therefore then creates the space for stuff that is profound. But unless you recognise and call it, label it, meaningless, then you're going to lose your capacity to determine the difference in your life. So find the meaning, construct a goal and move towards it. 4, start to keep a journal. Start to keep a journal. Yes, I know this is Oprah. Okay, I know this is Oprah stuff, I know. But the problem is, team, if you don't know what's going on in your life, you need to work out what's going on. So important. So if you don't know what's important, if you've got yourself absolutely in the cycle of burnout and you have no idea what's important, then you won't necessarily know the changes that you have to make in your life. Therefore, you need to work it out. And so before you can address the burnout matter, you need to address what are your priorities in life. And journaling is the way to do that. What's important to you? Because writing creates that reflection and that reflective space, allowing you to think about, okay, what have I gone through? And the multiple interpretations of what you've gone through, and start to write and imagine and configure your next steps. Now this may be free-flowing handwriting. It may be dominated by fear. It may be dominated by grief. It may be dominated by sadness. But write it out. 5, understand that doing nothing is doing something important. In burnout, all of us become incredibly used to doing too much. And anything that involves a sort of stopping makes us feel a bit bored or a bit anxious, right? Therefore, learning to sit, learning to breathe, learning to stop, to unbelievably, if you can, relax, is incredibly important. Now, I am absolutely dreadful at this. I'm absolutely dreadful at stopping. But I've had to, in the last year, create this intervention in and for myself. Now, I have a lot of instincts which always push me to do one more job. Keep going, just do one more job, one more job, one more job. And then about 4 months ago, my wonderful husband, Jamie Quinton, looked at me with his beautiful big sad eyes and he said, "Oh, I thought we'd be able to play a game of Scrabble." This was late Sunday afternoon, Sunday night. I thought we'd play a game of Scrabble. We haven't played since Christmas. And I thought, what a terrible human I am. what a dreadful wife I am that I've kept pushing on. So it's Sunday afternoon, I'll just give one more, come on, finish one more job, come on. And actually what I now do is I finish the job and then about 3, 4 o'clock on Sunday, I now force myself to say out loud, I am stopping. Doing nothing is doing something. Okay. 6, don't undermine this problem. Don't undermine this problem. And what I mean by that is, unless you address the problem is not going to go away. So if you don't recognize burnout in yourself, then start to locate some of the proxies, and they're well presented in the literature, team. So what do we see? Declining performance in your thesis or your job. Reduced satisfaction in your thesis or your job. Anxiety, isolation, depression, increased cynicism, anger, impatience, lack of productivity, isolation, big one, isolation, sleep disturbances, and yes, headaches. Now obviously that's just about everybody. That's the culture. But what do we do now? Well, at least if you can recognize those attributes, you know you can start to address them. So what a lot of those attributes are about, I think, is you have a lack of control or a lack of ability to influence decisions. So express that problem with your supervisor, advisors, or peers. You've simply realized you don't have control over your life. So therefore express with your supervisor, look, I think there's some unclear thesis expectations going on here. So can we get some clarity on the expectations on me and on this thesis and on this research? You may simply be responding to the fast pace of work and you need to have stops in that behaviour. It may be a lack of social support. Contact your dean. If it's me, hi, contact your dean. Contact your deans around the world. We have a whole series of strategies for social support wherever you are. Contact us. And you may simply be working far, far, far too long and not spending time with your family and friends and not having any leisure life at all. We've all been there. We need to bring back leisure. 2022, we need to bring back leisure. So recognise these problems, address them and speak the words. Get help, talk them through. Strategies do exist. 7, have a think about the people that you mix with. Now, you may work in one of those terrible workplaces where every single minute is a living hell. I understand that. I've been in those workplaces. I get it, where every minute is torture. I get it. Now, you may work in an environment where you are surrounded by nasty, self-absorbed, dreadful people. Okay. And the problem happens, and again, this is an experiential ideology, this one, the problem happens when you're working with truly dreadful, self-absorbed narcissists, that it's like boiling that frog. You get used to that. You think that's normal and you're there to serve their narcissism. Now, what happens is academics have a tendency to hang out with other academics and administrators. And that's great. That's our workforce. That's tremendous. Friends are great. But sometimes those cultures can be incredibly nasty and negative. So, mix with a diversity of people. Create leisure. University workers are not the world. Trust me. mixed with different people. It'll change you. 8, discover autonomy. Now, a great book I recommend to you, wow I do, Patricia Jennings' Teacher Burnout Turnaround. Read it. Published in the last 6 months, I think. Great book. Really enjoyed it. Now, Patricia confirms that teaching is hard. You do, right? Teaching is hard. But it is harder when autonomy is reduced. So for all levels of the educational system, all of us, whether we're dealing with early childhood right through to university supervising PhD students, all of us have lost autonomy. We are pushed, we are pummeled, we are organised by frequently pointless KPIs, and all of that is causing burnout. It's also causing, can I say, the incredible attrition of teachers and academics. So this is not about individuals not managing, right? The whole culture about, oh yeah, individuals are just not managing. That's rubbish. No one can manage the expectations on teachers and academics at the moment. No one. So burnout is simply the canary in the mine, or indeed, if you will, the canary in the mind, confirming that our system is not working. It's not fit for purpose. And we need to continually talk about the system. Not about an individual not managing, we need to talk about this educational system. 9, ask what my intention is for today. This is a big one for me. Burnout is continued when we think today has been dreadful, yesterday was dreadful, tomorrow's going to be dreadful, this week's going to be dreadful, this year's going to be dreadful, this decade's going to be dreadful, right? And what happens with it's dreadful, is we don't sleep and we get stuck in that emotion. Now, I have one solution, and it's a big one for me, that allows me to survive and allows me to get out of this. So I ask one question in my drive to work every morning. What is my intention for today? What is my intention for today? Now, I focus, as you know, very strongly on paying myself first. I get up early, I read and I write for me. So 2 hours of my day, before anybody else is up, except my beautiful husband who gets up with me, is I do that. I pay myself first. So I've done my research before most people are even awake. And then, the important point then, and this is something I've done only in the last 5 years or so, is I get to work and I have a list on a piece of paper of the 5 emails, the 5 tasks that are important for me to address at the start of the day. So I come, before turning the email on and getting lost in other people's stuff, I have my list of 5, I do my list of 5, and then I go into the email and handle other people's problems. Because if you handle other people's problems first, you never do your actual work. So start with your intentions and then move to other people's. Start with you. Now, that I think will be transformative for you. It's one small step that asks you to think about today. And that today and those intentions will create movement out of burnout. 10. You are not burned out. You are a scholar working in a burned out society. I want to log an incredible book by Byung-Chul Han, The Burnout Society. One of the best books I've read in the last 10 years, The Burnout Society. Don't sit in disgust, particularly self-disgust, thinking that everybody else is cool and you're a mess. Actually, no one's cool. No one's cool. Everyone is lost in this system. And that's why Han talks about the Burnout Society. He describes, quote, I love this, quote, a violence of positivity, end of quote. With all the talk about positive thinking and gratitude and green smoothies, you knew we'd return there. This is actually making everything worse. So Han confirms, hang on to yourself, quote, a society of tiredness, end of quote, and argues incredibly passionately that we need to avoid, quote, solitary tiredness, end of quote. Han argues that we have an achievement society, his phrase, an achievement society, and that creates, quote, depressives and losers, end of quote. So as you can see, this is not about you at all. You're not burned out. We have a society, we have a family structure, we have a career structure, we have a publishing structure that summons an achievement society and therefore burns us out. We are separated, we are atomized, we are isolated. Or to quote Han, quote, their lives equal that of the undead. They are too alive to die, they are too dead to live. End of quote. Ooh. So, make a decision to be respectful of your time, respectful of your intentions. Be present in your present. Remember your why and make it powerful. I wish you love, light, and peace. Tia.